They say if you want real peace, stay as far from people as the good Lord lets you. My family has done exactly that for 134 years on 100 acres of rich bottomland down in Robeson County, North Carolina. Then one Tuesday morning I walked out to the mailbox like I had 10,000 times before and found a cream-colored envelope with a fancy little Magnolia logo in the corner. Inside was a notice from the Magnolia Ridge Homeowners Association fining me $100,000 for building a barn on my own land. I thought somebody had lost their mind until I learned they had quietly built 9 houses and their community clubhouse on that same land. That is when I understood this was not a mistake. This was a declaration of war. My name is Clayton Mercer. Folks just call me Clay. I am 56 years old, been working this dirt since I could walk behind a mule, and I have never once belonged to a homeowners association in my life. The Mercer place was deeded to my great-grandfather in 1890 when Ulysses Grant was still alive, and the closest thing to a subdivision was a church cemetery. We grow soybeans, a little winter wheat, keep a few hives for a beekeeper out of Lumberton, and I run a small welding and repair shop out back. Simple days, honest work, and the kind of quiet most people only dream about. The barn was my one indulgence. After Daddy died, I worked this place alone for 12 hard years. Every extra dollar from fixing combines and bush hogs went into what Daddy used to call barn money. Last fall I finally poured the slab and raised the steel myself with a contractor from Elizabethtown. Red iron beams, heavy gauge metal, high enough for the new sprayer, and the old John Deere 4020 I restored. When the roof went on, I stood there in the evening light feeling like I had finally built something that was mine instead of just keeping something alive. 3 weeks later the first letter came. Architectural nonconformity. Visual obstruction of community aesthetics. $100,000 due in 14 days. I laughed out loud right there by the mailbox. Then I called the number, left a polite message explaining the obvious mistake, and figured that would be the end of it. It was only the beginning. A black Mercedes rolled up my gravel drive a few days later. Out stepped a woman in cream slacks and heels sharp enough to stake tomatoes. Evelyn Hargrove, president of the Magnolia Ridge HOA. 2 men in polo shirts followed her like bodyguards carrying measuring wheels. She informed me that the southern 22 acres of Mercer land had been incorporated into their 2016 expansion plan and that my barn violated their design standards. I told her she was standing on land deeded before her neighborhood was even a gleam in a developer's eye. She smiled the way people do when they have never been told no and said I had 14 days to comply or face escalation. Escalation came fast. Another letter, another $10,000 tacked on, and language about liens and forced removal. I called an old friend from high school who went on to become one of the meanest land use lawyers in 3 counties. Tom Ransom listened to me read the letters, stayed quiet a long time, then said, "Clay, this is not stupid. This is deliberate. We hired a surveyor I have known since we were boys, Dale McAllister. Dale came out with drones, GPS-based stations, and a look on his face I did not like. 2 days later he spread a roll of prints across my workbench and tapped 9 neat rectangles sitting 38 feet north of where any honest map said the line should be. 9 houses, 2 garages, 4 driveways, and the Magnolia Ridge clubhouse itself, all on Mercer soil. I stared until the numbers quit swimming. Grown men had poured foundations, hung drywall, sold mortgages, and held cookouts on land that had never stopped belonging to my family. Dale said it could have been sloppy surveying, or somebody had nudged a few coordinates on a plat years ago, because stealing 22 acres in broad daylight is easier when nobody is looking. I spent the next weeks digging through tax records, GIS layers, and zoning files at the courthouse until 2 in the morning. What I found turned my stomach. A parcel listed as vacant and unowned sitting right where my grandfather planted loblolly pines in 1968. Someone had erased us on paper, while the satellite photos still showed my soybeans growing. Then one night, I found a single sheet of yellow legal paper in the mailbox. No envelope. Block letters in black marker. Stop digging, or we will bury you with it. That was the first night in 30 years I cleaned and loaded Daddy's old Model 12 and laid it on the nightstand. Evelyn showed up again a week later carrying a Tupperware of peach cobbler and a smile sweet enough to rot teeth. She wanted to talk neighbor to neighbor, no lawyers. She invited me to a wine and cheese get-together at the clubhouse, my clubhouse, built on my dirt. Tom told me to go, keep my mouth shut, and sign nothing. I went. The sign-in sheet looked innocent until the fine print. By signing, I agreed that my property fell under Magnolia Ridge covenants. I smiled, took the sheet, and handed Evelyn my own document notifying her that formal complaints of fraud and trespass had already been filed with the district attorney. She signed it without reading. 2 board members witnessed. I walked out with their signatures in my pocket and the cobbler still in the Tupperware. Court day came faster than harvest. The judge was 71 years old, raised on a tobacco farm, and allergic to nonsense. Tom laid out the 1890 deed, the tax receipts, the drone overlays, and finally the signed acknowledgement from the wine and cheese trap. Evelyn's lawyer turned the color of buttermilk. The judge leaned forward and asked Evelyn how exactly she justified building an entire subdivision on another man's land while trying to fine him for a barn. She had no answer that made sense. The gavel fell hard. All structures in the disputed zone declared unlawful, immediate cessation of sales, and authorization for removal at the association's expense. The judge looked straight at me and asked if I wanted full restitution. I said yes, sir. Demolition day felt like the county fair and a funeral all at once. Sheriff deputies, wrecking crews, news trucks, and half of Robeson County lined the road with lawn chairs and coolers. I shook hands with men I had not seen in 20 years. The first bucket swung into the clubhouse porch, and the cheer that went up rattled the pines. One by one the 9 houses folded like cheap card tables. Evelyn stood on the sidewalk screaming until deputies cuffed her for fraud, forgery, and a half-dozen other charges right there in front of God and everybody. 3 weeks later, I ran a rented dozer over the scars myself until the ground was smooth again. I planted 200 apple trees, Honeycrisp, Granny Smith, Arkansas Black, straight rows that will outlive me. At the new gate, I hung a steel sign I cut and welded in my shop. Mercer. Below it, in a weatherproof frame, is the judge's order. Let the mailman read it. Let the satellite see it. Let every soul who drives past know exactly whose land this is and what happens when you try to take it. Some afternoons a car slows down, windows tinted, somebody from what is left of Magnolia Ridge staring at rows of little green trees where their clubhouse used to be. They never wave. They do not need to. The message is clear. Peace is not the absence of trouble. Peace is knowing you stood your ground, told the truth, and the truth finally won. That is my story. Now I want to hear yours. Have you ever had to fight for something that was rightfully yours, a home, a piece of land, a principle? Did you stand up, or did you walk away? Drop your thoughts below. Tell me where you draw the line when somebody tries to take what is yours. I read every single comment, and I am listening.